All right, I see our live. All right, welcome everybody. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking about self-improvement tonight for leaders. I'm really excited to have John Becknell here with us from Safe Tech Solutions. I've just got a few announcements for us. I'm going to get us started and kick us off a little bit with some material, and then I'm going to hand the floor over to John. So announcements first, your quiz and evaluation link for this webinar to receive your continuing education is in the chat box. It also can be found in that confirmation email that I sent you earlier today. If you cannot locate that email, it most likely maybe ended up in your trash folder. Feel free to shoot me an email also if you just can't locate it, and I'll get you the link. The quiz and evaluation is mandatory. You have 2 weeks to complete it. And don't forget to sign into the chat box here on Zoom. If you're mobile and on a phone and can't find the chat box, send me an email. Zoom does record you when you log in, but often people log in from things that are not labeled and it's hard to pinpoint who is what. We can do it a few various ways, but this is another way to verify. So find that chat box. So tonight, why did we choose self-improvement? Why did we choose this as a topic? So I'm going to read you something that I found that I thought was, it really fit why I chose self-improvement for our first webinar of the year. So I'm going to read this to you first to start off our webinar. We need to stop glamorizing overworking. The absence of sleep, good diet, exercise, relaxation, and time with friends and family isn't something to be applauded. Too many people wear their burnout as a badge of honor, and it needs to change. So this is something that really has started my journey to self-improvement, being in EMS for 20 years and working all different types of shifts, all different types of roles, often putting myself aside and not realizing that pouring into myself and doing some self-improvement as a leader and also some self-care can really elevate your game. It can really make you a better leader. So one of the things that John is really going to be talking to us tonight about is who we are on the inside makes us better EMTs. It makes us better leaders, managers, supervisors, and we're going to really be looking at that tonight. A couple months ago, I was teaching in an EMS class, and one of the students had made a comment. She was talking with some other students and was talking about why she was leaving her position, and she really hammered home the point that who you are really mattered to her. And if you're struggling on the inside, it's going to come out in your leadership. And I thought that was really insightful. This young lady was in her early 20s and she had already figured that out, that who we are really does matter. And so self-improvement in leadership matters. You know, we don't all come into these roles arrived. And so one of the questions I had to ask myself many times during my career is, have I arrived as a leader? You know, am I where I need to be as a leader? Have I completed my journey? And one of the things that John often says is leadership magnifies our inner struggles. And as I've grown as a leader and moved into various roles, you know, it really does. And we have to be humble enough to ask ourselves questions, you know, asking yourself, did I do the right thing? Because sometimes you might have to interact with an employee as a supervisor, and it might turn into a difficult situation. And sometimes we might choose to answer a certain way or approach a problem a certain way. Maybe we're left to make a decision on our own. Some of us will choose not to make a decision. Some of us will choose to make a decision, and it may not be the right decision. But self-improvement is all about self-awareness, looking internally, looking at who we are, improving ourselves, and really asking the question, could I have handled that better? So John's going to take the floor tonight. I'll let John give a proper introduction, but thank you, John, for joining us. I'm going to hand the floor over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hey, everybody. I'm excited to be with you. And Andrea, I'm fully happy if you just butt in, or if you see a question in the middle of the conversation that you'd like to ask, or I'll stop periodically and see where you are, and because I want you to be an advocate for your people. I can get on and I could just take off talking. So some of you know me, some of you don't. I've spent more than 40 years working in and around emergency medical services. I started out as an EMT and a paramedic, and went into leadership and management, and then went back to graduate school and got master's and doctorate degrees in psychology, and spend a lot of my time working with first responder agencies, law enforcement, fire, EMS across the United States in areas of culture, leadership development, and health and well-being. And I love this topic. This topic is really interesting to me, and I hope it will become interesting to all of you that are tuned in. So here's what I want to say. First of all, I want to say that leadership and leading can be as fun and fulfilling as running a 5-alarm fire or running a major trauma call. And I want to pause and talk about that, because when we devote ourselves to leadership and we devote ourselves to learning about leadership, it becomes a great adventure in our lives. So I'm going to pause and take that apart for a second. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about why we get into emergency medical services. So the vast majority of people who, when we listen to them very closely and we ask cops, firefighters, medics why they get into this work, they say two things. They say many things, but when you categorize all the material, there's two things that come out. The first thing is they want to have an amazing experience or an adventure. When you ask people about it, they go, hey, I don't want to install auto glass. I don't want to be the greeter at Walmart. I want to run on calls and do something that's interesting. I want to go to work and be excited about going to work. So they're looking forward to having this adventure. The second thing that people say they want to do in getting into this work is make a difference. And they want to help people. They want to make a difference in their community, however they phrase it. So those two things are really often what characterize. And when you look at really happy and fulfilled EMTs and paramedics who've been in the work for 15 or 20 years, the ones who are really satisfied and happy are the ones who continue to feel as if the work is a great experience. It's that ongoing adventure, and they feel like they're actually making a difference. The people who feel like, it's just another call, or they feel like, doesn't really matter. Not what we do is dosing for dollars, and it's kind of BS. Those are the people that aren't excited anymore. But if you're of the first category that cares about having a great experience and cares about making a difference, let me entice you to leadership. Because if you think running a great cardiac arrest and having the patient survive provides satisfaction and fulfillment, if you get into leadership and you really embrace leadership, I don't mean just managing. I don't mean just ordering supplies, filling out a schedule, and making sure the truck goes out. What I'm talking about is really leading. So what is leadership? Just to remind us, because we're going to talk about it. Leadership is taking initiative and action when something needs to change, be different, be improved, created, or stopped. So when you suddenly go, oh man, this pisses me off, I wish we could do something different about this, that's the call to leadership. And you don't have to have the title, you don't have to have the rank. You know, all of us know people who are in executive positions who aren't leaders. And all of us know people who are in grunt level jobs who are genuine leaders. So what I want to excite you about is embracing this whole idea of leadership, where you're somebody who sees something that needs to change, be different, be improved, created, or stopped, and you take action.
So John, I'm biting my lip over here. So you're telling me that leadership is creating change and influencing others, and we have this cultural problem in leadership where when you do speak up about something, it's either seen as a complaint, whether it's valid or not, or it's seen as, why are you trying to rock the boat? Um, we know that often people that speak up are seen or labeled as troublemakers. And so what you're telling me is that when you're labeled as such, and you keep this professional, of course, when you highlight an issue, we all know those that maybe approach it incorrectly. But many of us that highlight issues in leadership often have trouble in EMS agencies because those are the people that are not getting promoted. And so we have this kind of wheel of lack of change and lack of innovation. So, I'm biting my lips over here and I'm really trying to be quiet, but this is just screams at me, are we telling people to go out and speak up and have influence and say, hey, I'd really like this to change. And what if they do take that into the workplace and they're ignored or labeled as a problem, and their ascent to leadership slows? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. So, wonderful question. What I'm going to say is remember that leadership can be having a title, position, rank, but the proof of real leadership is in the pudding. And what I mean by that is if you see something that needs to change, the challenge of leadership is, oh my God, nobody in my organization wants to change. The way we did it the last 20 years is the sacred cow that will never change. Here's the adventure of leadership. The adventure of leadership is saying, oh, how do I take a bunch of change avoiding dinosaurs and begin to create the urgency and the interest and curiosity toward change?
Sounds
So,
challenging.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
An
and I'll tell you.
adventure.
So, and what is an adventure? If I just ask you when I use that word adventure, Andrea, what do you think of?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what really comes to mind first is travel. But to relate to that to EMS, yeah, I mean, doing something new, a change, new scenery. I mean, it could be, every shift is an adventure. You're going different places, experiencing new things. So that's what pops into my mind.
And the why you thought travel, why that popped in your mind, because we often think of a young man or woman leave home and they seek their adventure, right? They go out and seek their fortune and it's a big adventure, or we join the military and it's adventure, or we decide to climb, Kilimanjaro, or we decide to paddle across Lake Michigan, an adventure, right? So what adventure really is adventure is launching out of one's comfort zone to do something that has risk associated with it, where in the end, when the adventure is over, it's something to reflect on and tell a story about positively. It's like
Yeah. Okay.
early in my career, I got an invitation to go to Saudi Arabia and work in the desert of Saudi Arabia with the Red Crescent Society, developing the rural emergency medical service system in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It was very different than all the city paramedic jobs that Saudi Arabia used to have. We were sleeping in tents in the desert with Bedouins, and it was truly an adventure. And I tell you, there were some days when I didn't know if I would survive. And and you can see the smile on my face as I tell this story later, because adventures always have risk associated with them. And if you're going to go to the dinosaurs in your organization and you're going to say, the way we've been doing the schedule for 20 years has got to change, or the way we've been hiring people has got to change, or the way we've been deploying our vehicles has got to change. If you're going to say that, or you're going to go to your town and you're going to say, us being volunteers for the last 40 years and you guys getting free EMS, it's got to change. If you're going to do that, if you're going to lead change, you are going to take a risk. And one of the interesting things we say about leadership is if you're going to lead, what that means is stepping out front. It means stepping out front and saying, hey, everybody, here's a different place to go. Come on and follow me. And what happens when you step out front is there's always a target painted on your back.
Yeah, and
And
you've got to be
so,
brave. You've got to be
yeah.
brave. Yeah.
So, and this is why a lot of people don't lead. It's why people have titles and are managers and they order supplies, fill schedules, get trucks out the door, but they don't actually lead us to anywhere good or new because they are afraid.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I mean, just depending on the experience or maybe even lack thereof, I could see how there would be some fear there.
Right. Yeah, so one of the things we say about leadership is if you genuinely embrace leadership, actually, there's two things I love to point out about leadership. If you get hold of leadership and get hold of what Andrea and I are talking about today in terms of real genuine leadership, it will change your life. It will give you tools that you can impact your personal life, your family life, your friend life. It will help you accomplish the dreams. You said, wow, I want to buy that RV and travel to all 50 states. Oh man, I want to build that house down by the lake. Oh, I want to go back to school and get that degree. It takes leadership, personal leadership, and family leadership to do all of those kinds of things. So if you'll get good at leadership and you'll devote yourself to learning about leadership, it'll change your life. The other thing it'll do is dramatically impact your inner life. What we like to say is if you're going to step out front and say, hey, everybody, come this way, we need to change something, it will kick you in the ass, it will right size your ego, and it will make you a better human being.
Mhm. Yep, definitely. And that humility point, being humbled, because not everybody's successful the first time or the second time they try to do something. So yeah, it makes me think of humility as well.
Yeah, it's this idea where where to step out in front, most people won't step out and lead unless they know that they can be 100% successful. I tell you a story about Bill, the guy I'm working with. Bill's a supervisor in a large Midwestern ambulance service. And Bill's been at this, he's in his 50s, he's been at it for a while, been a medic, been in education, done all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that Bill recognizes very clearly is that many EMTs and paramedics have never slowed down enough to really think about career development. What am I going to do long term with this career? Is this going to be a stepping stone into something else? Am I going to use this as a launching pad into another allied profession? Am I going to go to medical school? Am I going to do this for a period of time and then when I've used my back enough times, I'm going to go do something else? He sees this whole vast desert of career development. And interestingly, what he's done in his organization is he said from the minute somebody is hired in our organization or starts working with us, we should start talking to them about career development. So within his organization, he's developing this entire program that is an ongoing part of what this organization does in career development. So here's what I have to tell you about Bill's plan. Sounds like a cool idea, right?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. It's been an uphill push. He's had to convince leaders, he's had to get resources, he's had to get people to devote time, he's had people to have to change the onboarding process in their organization, all of that kind of stuff. And here's what I want to tell you about it is that he's now starting to see the fruit. This program is starting to take off. And what he's starting to really realize is that all of this work has been extraordinarily worth it and he goes home on most days feeling a deep and powerful sense of satisfaction. But along the way, just as you pointed out a minute ago, it has really kicked him in the tail, because he's had to try things that have failed. He's had to take risk. He's had to come back and eat humble pie. And as many of you know, Ben Wasman, who teaches the Leadership Academy, and as Ben is fond of saying that humility is an acquired taste, and it takes you have to do it, but you don't get good at leading without trying and failing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, with the trying and failing, I think trying and failing in the right environment is really important as well. Just, speaking from my experiences and some others, you can try and fail in a really toxic environment, and that could, turn you on your backside. Whereas I think a good test of a great organization is when you can go in and try and fail and be supported, but also be held accountable. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. So you used an interesting word. You said toxic.
Yes, toxic, unhealthy. I guess pick your favorite.
Yeah, when you talk about toxic, what are you talking about? Because I think it's really important. Well, we're talking about leadership and self-care, and trying to do good things for other people in an environment that's toxic. What do you mean by that? What does toxic look like?
So that's a hard one because I'm a feeler. So I feel that trying to describe it is hard. Toxic to me is, I'm going to use, I guess I'll just use descriptive words, people
Yeah.
that are backhanded, when you can't have a conversation with a supervisor or manager face to face, but, you're hearing things from others. There's a lack of transparency. Maybe there's a lack of honesty or integrity. Someone who onboards you and has some negative intentions for you, i.e. they want your ideas, they want to utilize you, and then ignore you when it's not convenient for them. I could just go on and on, secret keeping, sweeping things under the rug, teaching poor behavior. Some of the men, teaching these younger men that come up, maybe not great habits when it comes to treating others well or managing others. That scares me. I just, yeah, I mean, thinking back on my career and some of the places I've been, like I had to unlearn a lot of behaviors. And I wasn't made aware of a lot of things that I was taught when I was young in a certain institution, that I really had to unlearn and relearn and grow from. But a lot of leadership, I think, is it's not innate. A lot of people think, oh, you're born a leader, or you have this charisma and people want to follow you. But I always challenge that, just because of my journey and the things that I was taught, that then realized, wow, this is automatic behavior for me.
Are you looking for your
Really
guys or are you looking
interesting.
for yourself?
So yeah,
The
that's
Zoom?
my long-winded.
That's who you're talking about.
For myself. He put a thing around.
Got it.
So I agree with you about toxic, and I think it's really important for people to pay attention, because toxic organizations are extraordinarily difficult to lead, and they are likely not to change, and they are the ones that will churn through people. And in a simple shorthand to everything that Andrea said is that toxicity is often drama.
Mm.
And drama shows up when people talk behind one another's backs, when people aren't direct and honest, when people foment conspiracy theories, when people sit around and say, you got to watch out for Bob because Bob is this way, or you've got to watch out for John because John is this way. And when people do that kind of stuff, it just creates a toxic environment where what happens is that people then become suspicious of one another. They start looking for enemies. They start retreating into their own cliques. And then they start wars against one another. So what does that sound like? It sounds like what's happening in our nation today. And what we have to understand is the leadership on both sides of the aisle that we're seeing in our nation today is not a great example of the kind of leadership that we want. So this is back to your original question, is how do we work within organizations in which there is this toxic stuff going on? And here's what I want to say is, as you embrace and sink into leadership and really understanding the mechanics of leadership, this ability to influence people in a direction and also to influence yourself, as you sink into that, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to recognize the toxicity, and you're also going to develop the inner strength. Can I work here? And is this a healthy place in which I can lead change? Or is this a kind of organization that I need to say, been there, done that, but move on? All of those are important parts of leadership. And they begin, so the topic here that we're talking about today is really self-improvement in leadership. It really starts with you. And here's what I have to say after 40 years of leading, is I have to say that the hardest part of leadership is leading yourself.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is it's so important as a would-be leader and as aspiring leaders or growing leaders or maturing leaders, it's so important for you to say, how am I doing leading myself? So let me pause and just for a minute. All of you know people who have titles, positions, and authority who you're not very excited about following. You might do what they say because they have some power over you and because they have rank. But if they didn't, you likely wouldn't follow their lead. We've also probably encountered a coach or a teacher or a parent or a grandparent or a figure we've known from history where we would say, you know what, I would follow that person into the breach of a firestorm. And when we compare those two, what we really realize is the people that we want to follow, the people that we willingly follow, not the ones who are authority figures with rank, but the ones who we really want to follow, they approach leadership in an interesting way. And when we take it apart and we say, what are the characteristics of those that we would willingly follow into a very difficult circumstance and sacrifice on their behalf? Those people typically are people who have a vision that we're attracted to. They also have personal character that we trust. Their words and their actions align. They are the kind of people that we would trust with our checkbook, trust with our precious things. So they have a vision, they have character that we admire and trust. And the third thing is in some way, shape, or form, they have developed a connection or a relationship with us. So now if you think about all three of those things, seeing a compelling vision, having internal character, and building a relationship, all of those three things begin with who they are inside.
So what if I'm in an organization and I'm making really great money? Everything is okay, except it's just a little bit toxic. Um, and I noticed that most of my leadership team, their words and actions don't align. So for example, my CEO says, he's gonna get with me on a project and it never happens. And there's just this lack of, there's a promise and the promise doesn't get fulfilled. One of the things that I've been learning is I look for that in my leadership. And it's really important to me. Like if you say you're going to do something with me, for me, even the smallest thing, like, hey, I'll get back to you tomorrow on this, and you don't, and then there's no sense of remorse. Like there's never an email that says, I'm so sorry, I totally forgot, or, it's just this constant words and actions misaligning. That for me is a red flag. But often what I find is a lot of our personnel and our leaders are more than willing to let that boundary slide and say, everything else is okay. It's just I noticed that we don't do a lot of the things that we say. And it's okay that Bob didn't get back to me last week. And it could be for money. It could be that they're afraid to leave. It could be, that they're unable to move. Maybe it's a monopoly and that's the only EMS agency in the area. So that's something that comes up a lot for me, and it has during my career, is where do you set that boundary? Because often I talk with a lot of people that are just either unhappy or slightly unhappy and say, you know what, I'm just going to put up with this because it's really difficult for me to move, or I'm never going to make the money I'm making here. But there's just this word and action misalignment. Is there any advice that we could offer to someone that's dealing with something like that? Obviously my personal advice would be go on an adventure and, find a new position because you might be delighted, but I know that that's not always an option. So yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on something like that when you notice that words and actions are not part of the culture.
Boy,
I know I kind of dropped that on you too. I apologize. That's a really
well,
good question.
I'm sad to say this. I'm sad to say there are a number of unhealthy EMS organizations, and they exist, and you can tell they're unhealthy because the employees are unhappy. There isn't trust within the organization. There isn't a unified sense that we're all moving to do the same thing. Um, um, there are a lot of them out there. And what I want to encourage you, we teach, Aaron and I and Ben teach all the time that leadership can happen at any level. And it is possible to begin to foster change in an organization wherever you are. But it may be too huge to change a whole organization. But what I want to say to you is the best way to thrive in a very difficult environment is first and foremost to make sure that it's that you are doing the right thing. So it's really easy. Our human tendency, and this is sort of one of our cognitive biases, and cognitive biases are kind of brain flaws built in that help us survive. But one of those cognitive biases is that we're more prone to seeing negative stuff than we are to seeing positive stuff. And evolutionarily, our brains developed that way because it was more important to recognize that there was a threatening tiger that wanted to kill us out in the savannah than it was to see a beautiful flower. So our brains spend more time privileging and preferencing negative information. But working in an EMS organization, that negative stuff probably isn't a tiger that's going to eat you. But what you can do is begin to notice in yourself what you see, the negative stuff that you see in others. You can begin to start saying, how does this live in me and how can I address it? So one of the things that I do when I'm working with an organization or I'm working with an environment where words and actions don't match and where there's toxicity, the first thing I want to do is to make sure that I show up in the best possible version of myself. And when we talk about self-improvement, one of the key things that we talk about is a sense of self-mastery. And what we mean by self-mastery is the promises and commitments made equal the promises and commitments kept. It's a very simple thing, but many times I know in my life, especially at New Year's and New Year's resolutions, I make promises to myself and to others that later on I don't keep. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that that balance of promises and commitments made equals promises and commitments kept.
So you're living within what you expect from others.
It's such a wonderful thing that to do is to let other people who you quickly judge, to be flawed in their leadership, actually can become great teachers for you.
Yeah.
And remember, people will naturally follow people that they trust. And we can lead people by scaring them. There's lots of that going on in the nation today. People on both sides of the aisle are scaring their followers and saying, oh my God, you've got to follow me to this direction, because if you don't, these evil people will do all of these bad things to you. So you can do that, but fear is not a long-term leader. All you have to go back in history and look at leaders who rose to power by scaring people, and you'll find that it's not very sticky. What people want to lead is someone who clearly can lead them to a better future, but clearly embodies that within themselves. And so we think a more sticky way of leading is building a positive relationship with each other and showing up in good character. So that's why, and that's why when you step out, why leadership, why we say it'll kick you in the butt and right size your ego. Because if you genuinely want to get a group of EMTs or paramedics to follow you, you have to earn it. You really have to earn it. And that's going to take you doing the work on the inside.
Okay.
So I know you had some other questions, and I've got some more stuff, but I want to give you a chance to ask some more of your questions.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I've already addressed a few of them. So can we dive a little bit deeper into the self-care aspect of things and how that actually impacts your self-improvement? So, leaders that are, not sleeping, not getting time with friends and family, not eating well, not taking care of themselves. We live in a culture of, it's very fast paced in EMS, and whether you're in a leadership role or in an ambulance or wherever you are within an organization, there is an expectation to be on all the time. And oftentimes, especially with the pandemic and operationally how challenging things have been, we've got leaders that can't shut their phone off, they can't go away for weekends anymore. What advice can we give to those that are in that position, to realize that self-care and self-improvement are intertwined? How you pour into yourself is how you're going to show up at work. So, in me personally, I've tested this theory quite a bit. I've even filmed myself after being awake for 30 hours and recorded it, because I figured one day I would utilize it. I have some recordings of me ranting in anger, because I didn't get to sleep. And so and then you record yourself well rested, and you notice the change in your attitude, and cognitively how you're going to respond to things is just completely different when you're rested and relaxed versus not. So, if we're going to self-improve as leaders and we're showing up fatigued and tired and maybe in poor health, how can we start to work at that and kind of pick away at that to make sure that we're showing up and we're able to continue to improve? Because I view that in our industry as one of the bottlenecks, is that we get stuck there and we don't know how to get out of that. And it's because of our work environment and our culture and what's expected of us. So the first thing I think of is boundaries. How do we set those boundaries?
Yeah, so great question and good stuff for this topic. We are in a really interesting time right now. In the last 6-8 weeks, I've never received so many calls from leaders, EMS leaders across the country, law enforcement, first responder groups, firefighter, fire department leaders, chiefs. I've never seen so many people for the first time owning up to the fact that they're out of juice. That this ongoing pandemic and the ongoing social political stuff that's going on, especially in law enforcement, is tapping everybody out. So and one of the most difficult things about what we're dealing with right now is we don't know when the end is going to be. And likely the end is not even going to be dramatic. It's not going to be like, whew, that ended last Thursday. We're glad we're past that. The end's going to be very gradual. And so I think these are unprecedented times for self-care. And so to get to your point about boundaries, one of the things that's really interesting that proliferates in first responder work is martyrdom and victimhood. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is we often have an overestimation of our importance. And so we think that we cannot practice self-care because we're so needed. I mean, I hear all of the time. I hear from people in Michigan tell me, somebody over on the west side of Michigan was telling me last week, I was telling him, you just need to take some time off. He said, I can't. There's no one else to do it. And there is this, we get imbued with this sense that we cannot take care of ourselves, and to take care of ourselves is to let somebody else down, to let the organization down. The victimhood comes when we do that, and then we start to circle down into blaming everybody else and acting as if the world is against us. And neither of those are a healthy way forward. And it just is rampant in organizations. So the boundaries are really important. But one of the first things I want to talk about as we talk about this topic of taking good care of yourself is the fact that we don't need a lot more education on what to do. When I go and I interview cops, firefighters, medics, and I say, if you were to teach a 5-minute class on teaching a new recruit how to take care of themselves, what would they tell you? What would you tell them? And they easily have it up. They say, eat well, get plenty of rest, don't work too much, get some exercise. If you have a bad call, talk about it, don't go isolate, be alone, develop healthy relationships. So we know what the stuff is. We know that we have to do something with our bodies, whether that's jog or work out or lift some weights or do yoga or whatever it is. We know that we need to do something with our minds. We know that dulling with alcohol and substances is only a temporary solution. And so we know what to do. The question that's around is, why don't we do it?
Well, why would I do something when my supervisor's not doing it and my CEO's not doing it and nobody is doing it? It
Yeah.
must not be that great if no one's doing it, right? Why would I do that? I mean, I love my supervisor and I don't see him doing that. And he doesn't talk about how great he feels after a workout. And, why would I even bother trying that? There's nobody to work out with. There's no one to talk about those things with. And maybe I'm afraid the guys are going to make fun of me at the station when I'm out there running around in my uniform. Why would I do that?
Yeah, so a question I start this with is I always start it with a question to say, is how you're living and behaving today sustainable for the long term? And the answer is kind of probably, I don't know, yeah, I can probably keep up. But what's going to be the long-term outcome if you don't take care of yourself? The long-term outcome is, here's what the research says. The long-term outcome isn't that you're going to break down mentally. The vast majority of us won't develop PTSD, chronic depression, or alcoholism, or suicidal ideation. The vast majority of us won't. But what we will become is we will become cynical, burnt out, and a pain in the ass to live with. And what will happen is a job that we hoped would be fun and add to our life winds up subtracting from our lives. And we wind up, what we learn the most about first responders who don't take care of themselves, we learn it from their partners and spouses. They say, they will tell you that, and we ask them, we say, is your loved one who's an EMT and paramedic becoming a better human being because they're an EMT and paramedic, or becoming a shittier human being? And what the answer from the spouses and partner is, the longer they do this job, the more shittier of a human being they become. And the price you're going to pay, you can keep selling your soul to the organization. You can keep convincing yourself that you have to pick up that extra shift, that you have to live longer, or that you have to work longer than anybody else, that you have to stay there. But here's the thing. The price you're going to pay is you're going to become gradually less happier in life, and the family and people that you love will pay a big cost for it. So here's what we find. When people stop and take care of themselves and they say, sorry, not going to pick up any more shifts, they believe that the organization is going to fall apart because they said, no, I'm only going to work my 40 hours. And guess what happens? The organization doesn't fall apart. Are they down a few trucks? Yep. Were there some delays in getting to calls? Yep. But did the organization fall apart and the world end? And, their grand disaster and declaration? No. What happened was they learned that they could say no. And learning to say no is a habit. It's just a habit. And you're right. It's hard to develop that habit when you're an organization that culturally rewards killing yourself, working too hard, picking up extra shifts, denying everything else. But you won't. Here's what I have to say to people. And I'm working with a bunch of cops out here on the West Coast who are working in horrific environments and need to take care of themselves. But here's what we finally have to say to them. There's no magic to this. You either want to take care of yourself or you want to just keep down the path of burning out. You have to make this decision. It's a decision that you'll make about your life, and it's a decision that you make for yourself, for the people you love, and for the longevity of your life. And no one can make that decision for you. You have to make it. Once you make that decision, there's a plethora of help out there. So what I want to tell you as leaders is right now, we may have slower response times. We may have some delays. We may miss some things. But what you have to model for your people and begin to talk to your people about is that the long term is more important than just the next shift. EMS is so great at reacting to the next shift, But if I fill the next shift, but come June, I've lost 20% of my workforce, I'm in really deep trouble.
Yes, good point. Yeah, I mean, when you're taking care of yourself, I mean, we all know that there's studies that productivity and longevity naturally improve. So when you do the math there, I mean, you're going to win as an organization long term. Maybe not short term, but long term.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the comments here, and somebody
Yes, me
said,
too.
so a wonderful comment. Somebody said, when I got COVID and had to basically stop leading my agency, it didn't crumble and fall apart. I learned a lot from that. And you know what? This guy, let me go on the record. John Becknell thinks that he's really important. He thinks he's really special. And you know what? For the last 9 months, I haven't been able to get on an airplane and go help my clients. And you know what? They're doing okay. John Becknell isn't that important. So I want you to like embrace those ideas. It's so important.
I have a text message here actually, I really like this comment as well. It says, if you want to see the change, you have to be the change. So many supervisor interviews that I've been a part of, where they said they would boost morale, but the reality was you didn't have to wait to become a supervisor to do that. So I thought that was really interesting as well. Very, very insightful comment is you don't have to be a supervisor or a manager to boost morale. You know, you can cut the drama and come to work happy and pleasant and lead that way and influence people. So I really like that.
When I was
Oh, go ahead.
when I was a young paramedic, just wet behind the ears and more dangerous than anything else. I had a wonderful partner who had been an Army medic named Joel Rowan, and he because Joel picked up leadership and decided to be a leader, I learned more from that guy. And my being here today is a great attribution to somebody who didn't have title, rank, position, decided to be a leader. And he was a leader every time he got in that truck and sat beside me. And it had a huge impact on my life. And here, you know, probably 35 years later, I'm telling you a story about Joel Rowan. And it's been that long since I worked with him.
Yeah, and often we don't get to hear those stories either. You know, you never know who you're impacting or who you're influencing. You know, sometimes you have to really look for that, or it doesn't come out until years later. And I think that can discourage folks when they do go to work and they are inspiring others and they don't necessarily know that. But you know, rest assured, if you're doing the right things and you're really lifting the people up around you and taking good care of patients, I guarantee people are noticing. So keep up that good work. So one just burning question, because we only have 6 minutes left here. And I wanted to be sure that we address this. So sharpening the saw. So continued learning for self-improvement. You know, something also we have to take time for. So, you know, are there some great books out there that you recommend reading? You know, what do you do for sharpening your saw? You know, what are some things like, for example, I think I was telling you about this book. I just finished The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. This is an incredible book. I didn't know what I was getting into until I got into it. It was all about self-improvement. It wasn't cheesy and it was very real world. And I also just read Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass at Making Money, actually. But the book is not about money. So don't let that fool you. That's not why I picked it up. Probably the two best books I've read this year. So, and I feel like that really sharpened my saw. I learned a great deal. I was applying those concepts in my life. When I'm really good at doing meditation and taking the time to do that, I find that makes me really creative and level-headed. Taking rest periods for me also sharpens my saw, because that's where I get my ideas for, you know, my blogs or any kind of creative material I do. Those come to me when I'm like washing the dishes or, you know, doing something like I'm at the gym and I'm in the middle of something and then I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. Those things really help me. So John, I'm curious, what would you recommend to our audience when it comes to continued learning and developing and sharpening their saw?
So 3 things I'm going to just say in closing. The first thing is be clear about where you're headed in your life. What really matters to you? Where are you going? You might call it a personal mission statement. You might call it something else, but you don't need to have any fancy jargon for it. But just be really clear about where are you headed? What's sort of the end game for you? And when you get clear about that, that helps you say yes and no to all kinds of stuff, and it helps you figure some stuff out. The second thing is that what you do on a daily basis, our lives are not lived in years and lifetimes, they're lived in days. We're given this 24-hour period. And what you do in a day, so find one thing that helps you sit down and focus. Maybe it's having a little journal book that you actually sit down and you write 2 or 3 things. I use one of these every day, and I get up, takes me 10 minutes while the coffee's making. I write what I'm grateful for, what I'm thinking about that day, how I'm feeling in my body, and what the day is all about for me. It takes me 10 minutes, but it's a grounding thing. And some days I wind up writing pages full, but find something that you do every day. Maybe it's you have some devotional reading that you do, some spiritual practice, but a daily practice is really important. So the first thing, clear where you're going. The second thing is find a daily practice that's really grounding and centering for you. And the third thing I'm going to suggest is hang out with some nutritious people.
Yeah, that's my
You
favorite.
are who you hang out with.
Absolutely.
And even though we can't be in person with people, I've gone out of my way now to really connect with the nutritious people in my life. Now, a nutritious person is somebody that after you spend time with, you feel like you've had your tank filled, not sucked dry. All of us in EMS have a lot of relationships that suck us dry. Hang out with a few people who fill your tank. Somebody that inspires you, somebody that motivates you. If you hang out with those people, you'll start to change. So those 3 things: get clear about where you're going, find something to ground you on a daily basis, and hang out with some nutritional people.
Yeah, and if you haven't found those people yet, it's okay to hang out by yourself until you find them. You will find them.
Great.
So, well, we have 2 minutes left. John, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to drop the quiz and eval link in the chat box again for you all, so you can click on it from there or find it in your email. We're going to open up the floor for questions. Like I said, there is some interaction that can happen here. You don't have to use the chat box. You can, so you can ask questions that way, or feel free to unmic yourself. Victoria, you're still on the line. I think Victoria can help me with the unmiking as well. We'll just be really cognizant of taking turns. But please feel free to unmic yourself or type a question in the chat box. You are welcome to do that.
And there's a question about a rural EMS organization. Are you seeing that?
Oh, I missed it. Actually, it's right in front of me. Okay, so the question, okay to read it? You ready? All right, I'm gonna read it. What would you say to a rural EMS organization in ABC state, I'm not even gonna say what state it's in, that's struggling to fill their shifts because they do not have funding support to pay enough to attract quality employees? Because of this, keeping the truck staff falls to a select few local people who are committed to the success of the organization. How do we improve that, or how do we avoid burnout? Wow, that's a really big question.
It's a giant question, and the short answer to that is remember that as a nation, we have built EMS as an industry and as a service to our public on too little money. And so EMS has been born and bred in scarcity. And what's going on in many rural areas is as the rosters shrink, more and more of the responsibility rides on the shoulders of the people that are left. there is no easy solution to attracting people. The young people today are telling us that they don't want to work at the same level that they did before. And what my encouragement to you, and this is a real leadership challenge, the encouragement is that the sustainability of your service will likely need more funding in the future, and the work ahead is to begin to get your community to recognize that, and to recognize that if you're going to have the resources that will attract and create an employment value proposition that will attract people, it's going to take some more resources. In the meantime, the community will likely not pay attention until you clearly set boundaries about how much work you're going to do. The boundaries are so important. You don't have to do it tomorrow. You don't have to walk out of the job, but you can go to your people and say, as of June 13th, we won't be doing this anymore, or we'll be down to this many trucks. Until the communities have to experience the value of the service that you're providing, they will undervalue you.
That is a great answer. So not to segue off, but the survey link should be working. If you're having trouble, I'll address it after our webinar ends, but I'm seeing responses come in. So try clicking that link again if you're having trouble, and then I'll troubleshoot right away once we get off. So no worries there. So just to add to John's comment very quickly, also, do what you can with culture as well internally. I don't think you brought that up, but just, focus on what you can. But I think, going with his answer is making sure the stakeholders in the community understand how important it is, because that will be a really important conversation to have. And feel free to email either of us after the fact. Like if you wanted like an assessment, I can direct you over to Safe Tech Solutions, and I can also provide John's email. If you want to look at something like that, we can help with that too. The link is not working. Okay, I'll fix it. I don't know why. So maybe there's a little setting that got clicked. Weird. I see responses in there, so that's odd. Maybe it's just favoring one over the other. Next question. Any other questions for us? Don't be shy. Comments? The email link works. Okay, good. No? Just looking around at the faces that are up. All right. Well, Victoria, you can actually stop us from Facebook Live. We really appreciate your help. Okay, yep, got you guys. I'll fix that in just a second. So John, I really want to thank you. Heartfelt thanks for coming and speaking to us tonight about self-improvement. I'm just going to hang out here for probably another 10 minutes to make sure I get that link all squared away and all that good stuff for them. It's okay to provide your email if some of these folks want to connect with you. Okay. Yep, I can provide John's contact info after this webinar if you want to have an off-the-record conversation with him, or as you already know, you can always contact me as well. So feel free to hang out. I will get that link squared away. And John, thanks so much for your time. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.